I used to think betrayal was something that happened to other people, you know, people who ignored red flags, who rushed into things, who didn't pay attention. I thought I was too logical, too careful, too aware for something like that to ever happen to me. Turns out, the worst part about betrayal isn't how blind you were. It's realizing how cleverly someone made you blind. I was 35, doing well for myself. I worked as a senior project manager for a mid-sized tech company in Austin. Nothing flashy, but the kind of job where if you're smart and quiet, you can stack a good life. And I was smart, I played it safe, I invested, I lived beneath my means. I didn't flash my money, but I had enough. Enough for comfort, enough for peace. I thought I had peace. My wife, Jenna, was the love of my life, or so I thought. We met in college at a mutual friend's bonfire. She wore this oversized sweater and talked with her hands like every word mattered. I was hooked within 5 minutes. She had this glow, this easy charm that made people lean in closer without realizing they were doing it. When she laughed, people laughed with her. And when she loved you, it felt like the sun came out just for you. We got married young. Everyone said it was too fast, too soon, but I didn't care. I was proud to be her husband. Jenna was the kind of woman who made a man feel like he'd won something. And for years, it felt like we were solid. Sure, we had our ups and downs, but nothing major. Nothing that made me question her. That's how deep the trust went. And then there was Luke, my best friend since middle school. We met in detention. He'd mouthed off to a teacher I'd forgotten my homework, and we bonded over a mutual hatred of school lunch pizza. We were opposites in a lot of ways. I was the planner, the thinker, the guy who always had a spreadsheet for everything. Luke was the smooth talking, spontaneous type who could walk into a room and make five friends before he left. But somehow it worked. We were like brothers. He was the best man at my wedding, slept on my couch after bad breakup, knew every dumb story from my childhood. I trusted him with my life. He was a regular at our house. Every Sunday we'd have dinner, me, Jenna, and Luke, like clockwork. She'd cook, he'd bring a six-pack, and we'd talk about everything and nothing for hours. I never once thought twice about him being around, never once felt suspicious. Looking back, that was the trick. They didn't hide anything because they didn't have to. They made me comfortable. They made me trust, and I did. Like an idiot, I did. Then one day I had to travel for work, a tech conference in Seattle, just 4 days. Jenna hugged me tight before I left, tighter than usual, said, "I'll miss you." I smiled, kissed her forehead, and walked out the door like a man with nothing to worry about. But when I got back, something felt off. She wasn't cold, she wasn't distant. In fact, she acted too normal, like she was trying too hard, smiling too big, touching my arm just a little more than usual. It didn't click at first. I just thought she was being sweet. Maybe she missed me, but that feeling, that little itch in the back of your mind, it started to grow. A few days later, I caught her smiling at her phone. She quickly turned it over when she saw me looking, said it was just a recipe from her sister at 11:30 at night. The next night, I got up for a glass of water. She wasn't in bed. I found her in the living room, sitting on the couch in her robe, whispering into her laptop. When she noticed me, she slammed it shut. "Late night recipe video," she mumbled. That was the moment my heart dropped into my stomach. It wasn't that I knew, not yet, but I felt it, deep in my bones. Something was wrong. I didn't sleep that night. I stared at the ceiling, heart pounding, mind racing. And the worst part, I didn't want it to be true. I didn't want to know, but I couldn't ignore it anymore. And what I found next would change everything. I didn't confront her right away. I didn't scream or cry or throw anything. I didn't kick Luke's door down or call Jenna out at dinner. Instead, I did something that even surprised me. I went quiet. Because the thing about betrayal is, once it hits, the emotions come in waves: shock, disbelief, rage. But then something colder shows up: clarity. And that's when I realized I couldn't blow up. Not yet. I needed answers, real answers. Not just the who, I already knew that, but how long, how deep, and how far they were willing to go. So I started with her phone. Jenna always left it charging in the kitchen at night. She used to joke that it helped her sleep better without the digital noise. I waited until she was in the shower and grabbed it. No passcode. She trusted me. God, the irony. It only took 30 seconds to confirm my worst nightmare. There were texts from Luke going back months, not weeks, months. I scrolled in stunned silence. I miss you already. Don't worry, he's clueless. And this one, it still burns. Soon, it'll just be us. No hiding. I took a breath. My hands were shaking. I opened her gallery. My heart thudded in my chest. There were selfies, private ones. Him in my kitchen, her in our bed. A video of them laughing, laughing, under the same blanket Jenna and I picked out during our honeymoon. And then it hit me like a freight train. This wasn't a fling. It was a plan. They were phasing me out like a failed app update, quietly, subtly, gradually replacing me without alerting the system, without letting the user, me, know. And still I didn't say a word. Because the pain, it was starting to fade, and something sharper was replacing it: control. I backed up every photo, every message, every timestamp, transferred the files to a hidden drive. I wasn't just going to confront them, I was going to dismantle the entire house of lies, brick by brick. That same day, I drove 2 hours to meet with a lawyer I'd researched the night before. Discreet, sharp, and ruthless. The kind of lawyer people hire when they're done playing nice. He listened to everything: the affair, the texts, the photos, and didn't even blink. You have enough to nuke her entire claim, but you'll need to be strategic, he said. No emotional outbursts, no mistakes. Let her make the next move. So I did exactly that. I went home and smiled like everything was fine. I kissed Jenna's cheek. I replied to Luke's texts with fake laughs. I even invited him over for Sunday dinner. Sunday dinner! And when I handed him a beer and saw him grin at my wife across the kitchen, something inside me hardened into steel. I knew exactly what I was going to do. What they didn't know, what they could never know, was that I'd already moved 90% of my wealth into a protected trust in my mother's name months earlier, not because I suspected betrayal, but because I was planning early retirement. She had no idea. Jenna thought the savings account we shared was all I had, a few $1,000s and a modest paycheck. And Luke? He only knew what I'd told him over beers and barbecues. They thought they were stealing from me, plotting behind my back like high school villains, but they were trying to rob an empty safe. Then 2 weeks later, Jenna sat me down. She said she wanted space. We've grown apart, she said. I need time to find myself. I nodded. I didn't fight. I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I just looked her in the eye and said, whatever you need. That's when I saw it, that flicker of relief. Like she thought she'd finally pulled it off, and I almost laughed, because while she packed her bags and called Luke to help load the car, I was already 5 moves ahead. This wasn't the end. This was the beginning. They say the hardest part isn't the betrayal, it's what comes after. And they're right. because once she left, once the house was quiet, I thought I'd feel some kind of relief, like the poison had finally been drained. But the silence, it wasn't peaceful. It was hollow, cold, like waking up in a house that's been abandoned by time. For the first few days, I just existed. I went to work, ate dinner, slept, if you could call it sleeping. I'd lie awake most nights, staring at the ceiling, trying to piece together when exactly I became someone she could lie to so easily. How long had I been living next to a stranger? How many nights did I kiss her good night while she texted my best friend under the covers? The grief came in waves, not just for her, but for me, for the version of myself that still believed in loyalty, in partnership, in us. But grief can be a useful thing if you let it sharpen you instead of drown you. So that's what I did while she moved in with Luke and posted sunsets and wine glasses like she was auditioning for a divorcee lifestyle blog. I quietly went to war. My lawyer, Charles, was a surgical machine. No drama, no emotion, just precision. We filed our response to her divorce request with calm, bulletproof counterclaims. We included the evidence, all of it, the synced phone data, the hotel receipts, the camera footage, the texts where she and Luke literally joked about me being too boring to notice. It wasn't just adultery, it was malicious intent. In our state, that mattered. I didn't need revenge in the courtroom. I needed facts, logic, strategy. Jenna's lawyer came in swinging, demanding half the assets, spousal support, even retroactive emotional damages. I could have laughed. It was like watching a car drive full speed into a brick wall they didn't know was there, because the house, not in my name anymore. I'd transferred ownership to a holding company long before she ever packed a bag. The retirement fund she thought she was entitled to, that was part of a trust, protected, locked down tighter than Fort Knox. And the cherry on top, I had filed for a forensic audit of her and Luke's financial activity. Why? Because there were charges on our shared card, dinners, hotels, concert tickets that I wasn't present for. It wasn't just betrayal, it was fraud. And the judge saw it, plain as day. The first court appearance told me everything I needed to know. Jenna walked in all done up, lipstick, heels, a tight little blazer. She thought she was walking into a battle she'd already won. Luke sat in the back, like a nervous side character, arms crossed, chewing gum like it was the only thing holding him together. Then Charles laid it all out, the videos, the texts, the timeline, the legal trail of how I'd protected my assets before the betrayal ever began. Jenna's lawyer tried to object, tried to pivot, but it was too late. She wasn't entitled to half of what she thought I had. Hell, she wasn't entitled to anything but what the judge deemed fair. And in our case, fair looked a lot like nothing. The judge ruled no spousal support, no ownership of the house, no claims on the trust. She walked out of that courtroom with a bruised ego and whatever she could fit into the back of Luke's truck. And Luke? He didn't last long either. About a month after the hearing, I heard through mutual friends that he'd been fired. Apparently, dating a married woman, then losing her a court battle, doesn't make you a great hire, especially when the guy you betrayed knows a few people on the company's board. Funny how small the world gets when you're on the wrong side of it. Meanwhile, I started to rebuild. I got a therapist. I know. Typical man tries to heal move, but it helped. Talking helped. Being honest with myself helped, because you don't just heal from betrayal by moving on. You heal by understanding it, by realizing it wasn't about you. It was about them, their greed, their boredom, their weakness. And once I accepted that, the anger started to fade, not because I forgave them, but because I outgrew them. I thought the courtroom win would be the peak. I thought stripping her of the money, the house, and any chance at spousal support would be the big finale. But revenge, real revenge, doesn't always come from the big moments. Sometimes it's in the quiet ones. It started with a startup, a tech venture I had quietly invested in during the fallout. A couple of brilliant developers I'd met years ago during a conference had come up with a promising app, clean UX, scalable model, and the kind of disruption that gets Silicon Valley's attention fast. They needed funding and operational advice. I gave them both. I didn't even tell anyone I was involved. I used my trust to fund it anonymously at first. The plan wasn't revenge, it was just me trying to move forward. But life has a sense of humor. 6 months in, the app blew up. We hit 500,000 users in under 3 months. VC firms were circling. My shares were multiplying. And with the company expanding, we needed to start hiring. I was reviewing the applicant list for marketing roles when I saw it. Her name, Jenna R. At first, I thought it was a joke, but no, it was her. Same email, same resume, lightly edited to sound impressive. Creative strategist, digital consultant, team leader, all of it inflated, padded, desperate. I stared at her profile for a long time. She had no idea I had any connection to this company, no clue that I was one of the people who now helped decide who got hired and who didn't. Most people would have just hit reject and moved on. But me, I saw opportunity. I looked at the hiring director and said, "Give her an interview." She raised an eyebrow. "You sure?" I nodded. "Trust me, I want to see something." 2 days later, Jenna walked into the conference room, hair tied up, blazer sharp, makeup flawless. She looked polished, professional, like someone desperately trying to rewrite her past with good lighting. She didn't see me at first. She walked in with that fake confidence she always used when she didn't know what the hell she was doing, but wanted everyone to think she did. Then I cleared my throat. She turned. Our eyes met. And just like that, the mask cracked. Her whole face shifted. The confidence drained from her posture like water from a broken pipe. She opened her mouth like she wanted to say something, then quickly closed it again. "Jenna," I said, smiling politely, "good to see you again. Please have a seat." The room was silent, just the soft hum of the air conditioning and the ticking of the wall clock. She sat down slowly, blinking, trying to keep her voice steady. "I didn't realize you worked here." "Oh, I don't," I said casually. "I'm just one of the board advisors. Investors like to stay informed, especially when it comes to hiring decisions." I let that sit in the air. She tried to keep the interview professional, answering questions like her life depended on it, but I could see it in her hands, the way they trembled just slightly when she adjusted her papers. She knew. She knew exactly what this was. At the end, I stood up and shook her hand. "Thanks for coming in. We'll let you know." She didn't say anything, just nodded, eyes hollow, and walked out. We never called her back, but a week later, she emailed me directly. Subject, none, just one line. "Did you set that up to humiliate me?" I stared at the message for a while, thought about replying with something clever, a zinger, a quote, a gotcha. But then I realized silence was louder. I deleted the email. No reply, no reaction. She wanted closure. She wanted me to play the part of the bitter ex, to give her something to cling to justify what she did. But I wasn't angry anymore because I had won something bigger than revenge. I had peace. Jenna and Luke had burned everything down for what? A few months of lust and lies? They thought they were chasing happiness, but all they did was trip over their own egos and fall face first into mediocrity. And me, I walked away with the one thing they never thought I'd have: control. It's strange, the quiet that follows after the storm. At first, it feels like something's missing: the drama, the tension, endless mind games. They keep your heart pounding, your brain spinning. But once it's gone, you're standing there in the silence. You realize this is what peace is supposed to feel like. And I hadn't felt peace in a long time. It's been over a year since the last courtroom visit, since the final email, since the day I looked my ex-wife in the eyes during that interview and watched the realization hit her like a truck. There's no more rage, no more questions, just air, clean, quiet, mine. The house I live in now is smaller, cozier. No shared furniture, no recycled memories, no faint scent of betrayal in the hallways. I bought it in cash using some of the profits from the tech startup, the one Jenna unknowingly applied to. That venture, it sold last month. High seven figures. I walked away with more than I ever imagined. I'm not rich by Hollywood standards, but I'm free. Financially, emotionally, entirely free. I started traveling again, something Jenna always called a waste of money, unless it was her idea. I went to places I used to read about while she scrolled through her phone at dinner: Iceland, Kyoto, northern Italy. I stood on cliffs and in alleyways, in cathedrals and cafes, breathing in lives that had nothing to do with her. And for once, I didn't feel bitter. I felt reborn. I've even started dating again. Carefully, honestly. I'm not trying to replace what I lost, because truthfully, what I had wasn't real. What I want now is something earned, something simple, a love that doesn't need lies to survive. As for Luke, last I heard, he was sleeping on his cousin's couch after getting fired again. Jenna apparently stuck around for a while, but without the lifestyle, the money, or the attention, it didn't last. No surprise there. They built something out of betrayal, and betrayal is a house with no foundation. It might stand for a while, but the first strong wind will knock it down. And me? I'm stronger now than I've ever been. Not just because I got even, not just because I came out on top, but because I learned something most people go their whole lives trying to avoid. You can survive the worst thing that ever happened to you and come out better for it. You can be lied to, cheated on, humiliated, and still walk away with your head high. Not because it didn't matter, but because it no longer controls you. People like Jenna and Luke, they feed off control, off knowing they got to you, off watching you break. But I didn't break. I bent, maybe. I stumbled. I spent a few long nights staring at the ceiling, wondering how I'd been so blind. But in the end, I got up. I chose clarity over chaos, strategy over screaming, patience over payback. And that made all the difference. Now, when I see couples holding hands, I don't feel bitter. I feel hopeful, not because I believe in fairy tales, but because I believe in rebuilding. I believe in earning peace, and no one will ever take mine again. So, yeah, my wife ran off with my best friend, but I smiled at them on their way out the door because I knew something they didn't. I had already cashed out long before she ever packed her bags.